Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the 1991 basketball insert card designs. Basketball, it's kind of interesting looking at the inserts for basketball in 1991 because they were a little bit behind football and baseball. And considering what was about to happen in basketball, it's really kind of weird to look and see how these cards were basically all just kind of in the shadows of the other two major sports. Now, in terms of hockey was on a very different trajectory, and so its inserts came across in a very different way. But in basketball, you can see a hint of what was about to come, but you really it showed just how slow the basketball process was at this period of time. So it is kind of fun to look at these cards, but it also is kind of sobering in a way. And the very first card to look at is more of an honorable mention. Well, it's not even an honorable mention. It's just kind of to note that Upper Deck did a card set called the Rookie Standouts. And Rookie Standouts was the same card as the regular card in the set. I mean, the image was different, but the design of the card was the same. They just changed the logo on the card. That was it. So there's nothing special about this card, so it's not even something to include in this discussion. But it gives you an idea of just how limited there was in terms of number of inserts that I'm going ahead and throwing it here on the list in a very matter-of-fact way. But in terms of interesting card designs, this one, while one of the best looking cards, quite possibly, it doesn't have a design, so it doesn't really count. And there's nothing special about it because the rookie class really wasn't all that strong. The rookie class they were referring to. There were a couple of good rookies in it, but it didn't bring anything to the table. So there it is. But in terms of ranking all the card designs that are distinct, I got to start off with the Schoolyard cards from Fleer, which in the case here, there's a lot of design, and I want to like the card. And for kids, this would have been I shouldn't say would be. I was a kid at this time. Well, I was a teenager, but the card still read pretty well. But the problem here is that the cardstock of the Fleer cards was still very papery, and so these cards really seemed like they came out of a magazine. Part of the reason I think that is because there was actually an insert in magazines that showed a bunch of promos of Fleer cards, and one of those was one of these Schoolyard cards. And this and the next one that I'm going to look at were inserts in that really did feel like they were supposed to be inserts in magazines as opposed to inserts in packs. It's such a weird card set, the 1991 Fleer basketball card set, because it looks like it's trying to be innovative, and in many ways it looks like it is just super old and totally an afterthought. And this card really does start that out. But also, I can't really give too much more credit for the Dikembe Mutombo and the Dominique Wilkins cards because they come across in a similar way. On the card back, it's just super papery. It looks like something that was cut out of something else. No card design at all. However, at least with these, on the card front, this really does have more of a design element to it. Now, the design for the 1991 Fleer basketball cards had this weird NBA logo tie print design. And it was all done in blue, which was kind of cool, but it was also kind of amateurish. It was a weird merger of the two. Well, here they used a burgundy, and they used that same tie print effect, and the card reads better and it reads worse at the same time. It actually, in my opinion, looks a little bit less professional, and yet in some ways it has more of a professional quality. It is such a weird card set because when I look at the regular card set, it looks kind of odd. When I look at most of the inserts, they also look really odd. It's kind of strange, but Fleer was about to turn a corner, and we just weren't quite at the corner yet. Next, I've got NBA hoops, specifically the Slam Dunk competition. Now, the Slam Dunk contest cards, in terms of just the concept of the card, the fact that they exist, I think this is one of the great inserts of all time. And that's because for those of us who actually grew up in the 80s and the early 90s, we remember the Slam Dunk competition when it was actually important. And the reason it was important was because there hadn't been anything like this before. Back in the 70s, there had been the ABA, and the ABA had been a lot of fun, and they had allowed dunking, where in the NBA they didn't allow it. And then the two leagues merged, and the party atmosphere of the ABA was something that people kind of missed. So eventually the All-Star Game picked up a slam dunk competition as kind of a celebration of the ABA. And so for the first few years, what you saw were very basic dunk concepts that really read in an exciting way. I mean, these were some of the greatest competitions of all time in all sports. We're talking up against Super Bowls, finals, World Series. It doesn't matter. These slam dunk competitions were right up there. It was amazing. And then they got through all the basic dunks, and then there wasn't a lot of room, and so they had to get creative and figure out how to keep things going. But the slam dunk competitions of the 1980s were truly legendary. They were thrilling, and the fact that they had a card set that actually looked at it was something. There have been very few over time. So that's what I really love about these cards. The problem is the design really isn't very interesting. The design is a simple pop art effect for kids, and while it was a great fad at the time, I don't think it really holds up. I love these cards because I remember discovering them. They were actually in blister packs, so they were very rare. Not a lot of people had these cards. And so it was one of those treats for me in my card collection. I had something special. But I also remember how innovative the cards looked at the time. I just don't think they hold up very well. And I think that the other NBA Hoops insert set, which was their MVP's card, I think this one is better. I think the design is a little bit more professional, but and the card back is amazing, but I'll get to that in a second. But the images on these cards read a lot better than the slam dunk competition cards, because the dunk competition cards have the players dunking the ball. And it's great to have those shots, but I just think that the shots of the players holding up the trophies, that feels a little bit stronger to me. So to me, the whole card looks a little bit more professional and more interesting. But it's the card back. That's what is so great about this. On the card back, some of these cards have these incredible shots where you feel the whole space of the arena. You feel that magnificent aura of this larger-than-life event. And that is so rare on cards. I wish they would do it more, at least with some subsets. But with some of these cards, the backs actually read with some of the best shots I've ever seen on any basketball card. But still, NBA Hoops, it was still growing in terms of figuring out all of this card set, and especially the inserts. So I can't have these cards any higher because they were almost there. They had the idea down, but they hadn't quite started to think in terms of an actual set. These were really more SP cards. They had a bunch of SP cards that all fit together with a theme, and that's kind of what they did. Fleer was a lot better with inserts, but I have to note they were much, much better with football and with baseball. In basketball, they'd actually been doing good cards with the All-Star cards, but 1991 was kind of a regression a little bit. And it showed that as they were trying to do more, they had a tough time even matching what they'd done before. Now, the rookie cards, I think, are better cards than the previous year. The previous year was just very basic, but that basic actually worked pretty well in terms of focusing on the player. Here, the card is a lot better designed, it is a lot more interesting, but it's kind of boring. There's too much going on, and so it kind of gets in the way. There's no really strong theme, and the artistic elements are kind of thrown together. So this is a card that catches your eye, it pulls you in, and then it doesn't do anything when you actually get there. So I have this ranked higher than the NBA Hoops because there's more going on with it, and it really does catch your eye. It stands out. I just wish that it did more. Thankfully, there was one last insert set that Fleer did here, and that was their Provision cards. And the Provision cards, I can't say this is perfect because I've already seen the football cards. That's a lot better. The problem with these cards is they have a white border, and the white border, it does a good job of focusing on the content, but the content here is a very complex image of the player with very strong colors, and what you want is for that to be really enhanced. And the white does nothing to enhance. All the white does is it frames and isolates. That's all it's supposed to do. It just isolates. But you want for the rich image to really pop out and be a lot stronger. They didn't use black because they'd already used that in baseball. But they could have used gold, which is actually what they would use in 1992 in their set. But here, because it's white, you lose the strength of the, well, I can't say you lose the strength, but it doesn't have as much strength. The image doesn't have as much strength as it could and really should have. So it's a very clean, very nice card. it could just be better. And the whole basketball card set really did have almost an amateurish. The cardstock itself had kind of an amateurish quality compared to at least the inserts in the other sports. So I wish I could like these inserts better, but I really can't. But that does lead me into the top three. And the first one I'm hitting at number 3 is the Upper Deck holograms. And this is actually where we step into the range where basketball is really leading. These are the best holograms they did in 1991. I'm pretty comfortable in saying that. They're not the most interesting. In fact, that's the problem. But all they did was they have a cutout shot of the player and a full image behind the player. And they have them in different planes so that you actually see the whole room in there, but also the way that the colors come through. It reads well on the cards. I wish that I could do a great job of capturing that with photos, but photos are pretty tough to really capture how the card works. With other holograms they did, it's tough to really hit that magic spot, but with these cards, they actually have a pretty good job of hitting the sweet spot where the colors read right. So this is a hologram where Upper Deck actually nailed it. The only problem is, like I said, they don't have any design to it. They just have the name on it, the logo, it's just kind of floating in space. And so it's a card that's fun to explore, but it's not a card that's going to pull you in. That's the only flaw that it has. But Upper Deck did also do their Heroes card set. They kicked it off with Jerry West. And this is a really, really, really nice card design. Now, the whole theme for the 1991 basketball set for Upper Deck was wood flooring. And the wood flooring looks fantastic. It really does. And even on these cards, the Heroes cards look gorgeous with the wood flooring. The paneling just, it carries so well. It does a great job of framing, and it gives you kind of an earthy and an older feel. And the shots of Jerry West do tend to be really good. In fact, I would love for this to be better than the football card set that they did for Joe Montana, except the problem here is they have that big basketball sphere. It's perfectly round. And I understand the concept. It's basketball. The basketball is round, so that's how you're going to do it. But the problem is that it's not a good framing device. It has no interest. A box has an interest. A diamond has an interest. An oval has an interest. A circle has no interest at all. It is kind of a cardinal sin for design work. And they went with it because it was thematic, but it holds the card back. And so that's the reason why it's part of the reason why it's not at number 1, but it's also the reason why I feel that the Joe Montana card was better in football. Regardless, it's otherwise a really, really great card design here in 1991. But I've got to say that for me the number 1 is kind of a personal one, which is the Skybox insert set. Again, this was a blister pack insert, and so that means that very few of us actually found it. This is another one of those sets where I was lucky enough to have these cards. And what I like about the cards is that for the main set, they had these incredible graphics, but they didn't tend to marry the graphics to the players. With some of the subsets, they could pull it off, but most of the time, there was this break between the two where the shot of the player held the card back. Well, here with most of these cards, they just get into the design. Some of it is 3D, some of it is 2D. But this is where the design was just carrying through. And they're kind of interesting the way they work. And it's interesting that I have for the number 1 card insert design for 1991, a design that doesn't even have basketball players on it. And part of what makes that interesting is they actually do have a couple of cards in the card set that do actually have basketball players on it. It's the back-to-back cards. And there's nothing interesting about them. This is not a consistent insert design. This is an insert set with a whole bunch of random cards that are kind of thrown together. But it's really interesting to see the way they look, and it's really cool, the art that they went with on so many of these cards. So I put this at number 1 simply because it was cutting edge at the time, and it actually reads really well today. I think that it is the one that holds up the best. And that's because it is the only complete card design. Everything else was just missing something. But other than that, that's what I've got for the rankings of all the basketball card design, the basketball insert designs for 1991. I'm going to look at hockey, and I'm going to look at baseball, and then I'm going to wrap up with a worst of and a best, then also a best of across all the sports. I'm going to do that later on. So this is the basketball entry. Let me know what you think of my choices and your memories of these cards, because these cards with basketball, to me, I think there's more of a memory of discovering these things because of how new everything was, but also how weird everything was. That is a pretty distinctive quality about basketball cards at that time. So, but yeah, definitely let me know in the comments below. Check out my other videos if you haven't had a chance, and subscribe. And thank you very much for watching.